But I was like, I'll bet you there's something that we can do with our existing resources, and this is the key part, is that it's sawdust money. It's money using your existing resources that you're currently underutilizing to generate new money for a specific project. And so my favorite way of doing this is like, if Daniel wants to buy a boat or wants to buy a car, I love the idea of him being like, so I'm just gonna work one extra day per week over the next year, and then I'm gonna buy it. The richest people I know, that is the behavior that they typically use. I want this thing, and so I'm gonna go make the money to buy the thing. I'm not gonna use my existing income. I'm not gonna use my existing resources. I'm not gonna use my savings to buy it. I'm not gonna go into debt unless I know that I'm gonna pay it off within a year and I have no prepayment penalty and I have a clear plan of how I'm gonna do it. They have a clear plan of how they're gonna make the money in a very defined time period. And it's from doing above and beyond. It's looking at all the stuff you got. And the reason that I like this is I was talking to a good friend of mine, Sharon Servatza. He's president of Real. Actually just became a board member, excuse me. And he said, you just want to write yourself a swimming pool. And I was like, what does that mean? He said, so Paul McCartney, the Beatles, used to say he wanted a swimming pool. And everyone's like, well, how are you going to pay for it? Now, obviously, he has the money for a swimming pool. But he didn't want to use his savings. He didn't want to use his income and his royalties. He didn't want to go into debt for it. And so what did he do? He was like, I'm just going to go write a song. And so he writes a song, and he writes himself a swimming pool from the money that he collects from selling the song, right? And so I think about this a lot because I think it's a different way of thinking about money. It's like, I want this thing, and so I don't want to limit that thing. If anything, I want to use that thing to motivate me to find other resources. So what I'm being is resourceful rather than draining resources I have. I'm finding new resources by utilizing existing assets that are currently under my control. And so this is fundamentally like people are like, well, you could Airbnb one of the rooms out. And it's like, okay, that's one of the things I'm going to do. But I also have some time. So it's like, maybe I'll drive Uber. There was one of my favorite customers ever at my gym. She was a mom of 4, single mom. She didn't have the money for the gym membership. And she was like, well, I could drive Uber one day a week and that I would be able to afford it. And I was like, great, then do that. And so that's what she did. And she was one of my longest standing members, lost 100 pounds. And it's like, there's a shift that happens when you decide to do it that way. And I think there's something to be said about creating a vacuum, about creating space. I've heard the saying, like, make yourself poor, right? Of the idea of like, how do I create this deprivation? How do I create this threshold that all of a sudden increases my demand for money, right? Because everybody has a demand for money. Like, you have a certain lifestyle that you have grown accustomed to. And so that's your minimum threshold. That's your minimum requirement for living. The real wealth comes from being able to continue to jack this up while keeping this low, of course. But in the